It How to Know a City, the epistemic value of city tours, and this is in the Philosophy of the City journal, which is a new journal. And then what we do at the end of it is I try to read and explain, see what's good about that paper, and then we review it. So I have a review site where after we review this stuff, so this is the last one, where this was a kind of a liked paper, we put a review up, and we get to use emotes to review the paper. And eventually also, the video gets posted on YouTube, and then it gets embedded right here on the website, and people can see, like, this was a well-liked paper. Like, I liked it, and Resute also liked it. And so, yeah. Yeah, so this is what we do. And feel free to comment along the way and ask me questions. Life is malformed carbon. Carbon is malformed hydrogen. Yeah, exactly. Diamonds are the only true consciousness. Yeah, diamond hands, Kasnick. That's rationality. So, yeah, and so we read it, and then this is by Pilar Lopez-Cantero out of Tilburg, and also out of Tilburg, Catherine M. Robb. And here we go. And let me know along the way if you have questions. I will do my best to answer them. As always, it's my first time reading it too. I will tell you if I've read something before, although I have read the same paper twice in Philosophy Roulette. I forgot I read the paper. That was a while ago, though. Introduction. When traveling to a new city, we acquire knowledge about its physical terrain, directions, historical facts, and aesthetic features. Engaging in tourism practices, such as guided walking tours, provides experiences of the city that are necessarily mediated and partial. Oh, by the way, my grandma used to give walking tours of Manhattan in New York. So this is a family business for me. This has led scholars in tourism studies and more recently in philosophy to question the epistemological value of city tours, critiquing them as passive, lacking in autonomous agency, and providing misrepresentative experiences of the city. Okay, so my grandma gave what she called river-to-river walking tours in downtown Manhattan. So you would walk from the East River to the Hudson River, just like along the southern tip of Manhattan. And that was where, old New York was, like New Amsterdam and things. And so she would tell stories of that time. Now, what the fuck? Like, I know this is the beginning of the paper and they're just setting stuff up. But it's like, the point is that, you're listening to some person's story. Yes, but you're getting the local flavor, of course. And I'm sure that's where this paper is going to go. But the idea that, like, people are like, it's misrepresenting the experiences of the city. Like, this is just hyperbolic. Okay. In this paper, we argue that the mediated and partial knowledge of a city acquired through city tours is not epistemologically disvaluable. In section 2, we outline the main criticism of city tourism as resulting in passivity, lack of autonomy, and misrepresentation of the city. We suggest that the ground of this criticism comes from how tourism practices, specifically city tours, provide knowledge of a city that is mediated and partial. One of the main functions of city tours is to transmit testimonial knowledge to tourists. Despite the mediated nature of this knowledge, in section 3 we argue that tourists are not merely passive epistemic agents that lack autonomy, but instead have the potential to actively participate in the generation of this knowledge. In section 4, we argue that city tours not only provide tourists with testimonial knowledge, but also objectual knowledge. The acquisition of this knowledge has the potential to be first personal and active and does not misrepresent the city's identity. We conclude by highlighting 4 further epistemic and ethical implications of our argument. Summonon, what's up? I got basically kidnapped for a personal walking tour by some tour guide at some point. Suddenly found myself being shown stuff. That's funny. Like, someone's like, I gotta show you this. Like, just come look at this. They were like really excited about like their local area, and like they were just like, and you're like, I have an appointment. Like, no, you have to look at this thing. That's funny. Now, my uncle he's got some mental issues, and as he's gotten older, it's gotten a little bit more pronounced. He was is a Shakespeare scholar, and he will just talk your ear off about Shakespeare. And most people are happy to hear because what he says is interesting and correct. He's a scholar. But it's like, after a while, people are like, look, okay, nice to meet you, we gotta go. But it's kind of like that. Like, he can just like sort of like pull you in and talk to you for like without stopping. He'll just keep going. So it's like, yeah, I understand. So, one of my uncles. I've got a few uncles. Okay, what is wrong with city tourism? The city is a central object of analysis in tourism studies. The focus is understandable given that almost half of the 1.5 billion global tourists in 2019 traveled to cities. However, in contemporary philosophy of the cities, tourists are often overlooked or mentioned only in passing. Recently, Quill Kukla has addressed this gap, offering a mostly critical view of the implications of tourist practices, specifically city tours, on visitors and the city itself. Now, in New York, we kind of hate tourists. It's a known thing. I even used to joke, I used to cut the word tourist down to sound like terrorists. So I could be like, yeah, the tourists that are here, they're really annoying. Which is not really good practice, but it was funny. But there's the other half of it is that we get so much tourist money here that it's a massive part of the economy, having people come through. So it's like we dislike dealing with them, but we like taking people's money. It's part of the economy. It's what keeps things running here in New York. So it's like, yes, like they are in our way, but like they are necessary. So is it a necessary evil? I don't think so, but like, yeah. Kukla finds 3 faults with city tourism. First, Kukla claims that tourists do not interact with the place in a rich way, but instead passively look at sites or listen to stories. Well, that's your fault, Quill, if you just don't, like, deal with, like, the real world. Like, if you think you're just, ooh, pretty pictures and taking it. Like, I mean, is that how you travel, Quill? I mean, it just seems wrong. This passivity has the potential to negatively impact a city, as tourists frequently endorse and accept rather than challenge the dominant narratives of a place. I mean, again, if you go to a place and you go there with the mindset that you're going to change it, you're a colonialist. You're not a tourist. Like, I don't think you want to be a colonialist, though. That's not good either. Oh, second, tourists give up their autonomy by allowing others to dictate their physical movement through the city, their selection of what is worth seeing, and how to interpret what they experience. You always have to make trade-offs. Third, Quill Kukla claims that urban tourists fail to engage in authentic city experiences, which can be detrimental to the city. Because tourist practices focus on main attractions such as city landmarks, this means that the city presents itself to tourists as having a fixed, unified, historically determined meaning and character. As such, tourist practices misconstrue the identity of the city by hiding everyday life and failing to caption urban dynamism. So one of the things my grandma used to say to people, and this is accurate because everyone who comes to New York is like, oh, I saw this, this, and this, but I missed this, like all these other things that I wanted to see, and I didn't get to see them. Every time my grandma, like, because people said this a lot, so she would always say, it doesn't matter what you see. There's always more to see. So you saw this time, you'll see something else next time. Whatever you saw was good. It isn't like you have to see everything because it's not possible. Like, yeah, if you go to like a small little place and there's one thing to see and you don't see it, yeah, you can feel bad. But like in New York, if you see one thing and you don't see something else, that's fine. That's your choice. But like you're not missing out on anything because there's no way to actually see everything. The idea that you're missing the dynamism is to think that like you're actually ever going to get an overview of New York, which is insane. There's millions of people around, like half of them are just fucking crazy people doing insane things. You think you're going to see more than a slice at any given point? It's the wrong concept to be coming in with. Yeah, tourists did 9/11, that they did. I once felt felt kidnapped when we went to buy a car. A buddy went with me and the guy picked us up. He had a driver and a bodyguard and he tried to sell the car while driving through the city of Auckland. Yeah, that's a little excessive. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, I had a buddy, he called me up. It was actually his birthday yesterday. He called me up like on short notice. He's like, could you come with me to buy a car? I'm like, dude, I'm not anywhere near there. And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, he was paying for a car in cash and it was like going to some part of the Bronx he didn't know. And I was like, oh, okay, good luck. Like, maybe if you told me yesterday I could get over to you in time, but I'm not anywhere near there and I had no way of getting over there. But I was like, and it worked out just fine. Like, he was buying a car off Craigslist. This is before Facebook Marketplace, where you didn't actually see the person. That was the one thing Facebook Marketplace has, is you can see the people and how long they've been on Facebook. So it feels like it's a little safer. But yeah, like this can happen. Yeah, things can go wrong quickly, but they usually don't. But yeah, see, this is the weird thing, this urban dynamism. What do you actually think that like you're getting Do you actually think I'm capturing the urban dynamism of New York? Even being here, I only get a small slice of the dynamism of New York. And so like a tourist is going to get a smaller slice, but that's fine. That's normal. Like there's the idea that like they're missing out. It's like all of us are missing out. Like everyone. It's like it's an unreasonable expectation. Okay. City tourism, therefore, should be criticized on the account that its practices are often passive, lacking in autonomous agency, and misrepresentative of the city's identity. Like, yeah, what is the... Like, there is a one identity of the city. Like, that's ontologically confused. These features are considered to be present in all city tours, regardless of how they are designed. For instance, Kukla believes that these criticisms still hold for city tours that attempt to offer balanced political and historical narratives and require active participation and listening from all partakers. Even in these cases, tourists are passive and non-autonomous recipients of information who only receive a partial and misleading representation of the city. It's always going to be partial, and it's always but then the question is, are you going to call that misleading? Everything is misleading. Why do you think, like, who has the truth of New York? Who has the truth of New York? There's not one person with the truth of New York. It's like ludicrous. Okay, it might seem that passivity, lack of autonomy, and misrepresentation are prima facie problematic and render city tours as wrongful or harmful in some way. However, it's not clear why and how this is the case. In fact, although such a stance is implied, Kukla does not explicitly state that city tourism is wrong or harmful. One way in which the implication is spelled out is the contrast made between passive tourism and spatial agency. Spatial agency is the ability to shape the place one lives in and to be shaped by the place in return. Martin Scorsese. Kukla claims that this ability is a valuable and necessary element of one's experience living in a city. I was just thinking, there's a poster, or like a laminated sheet of my grandma and like her walking tour thing, like outside. I'm going to go grab it for you guys. Considering that people who participate in city tours are, according to Kukla, passive and non-autonomous, they are unable to shape the places they visit and cannot be shaped in return by those places. If spatial agency is necessary for a valuable experience of a city and city tours do not provide this, then city tours could be thought of as wrongful. Yeah, I'll get it, Adam. Wrongful insofar as they are deficient in this way. All right, hold on. I'm going to go grab it because it's going to be fun. BRB. Yeah, November 1990. Good old fucking shit. So yeah, you can see the Twin Towers. That's my grandma in front of the background. Like, yeah, that's Brooklyn Bridge. Like, that's the South Street Seaport, what it used to look like. I'll take Manhattan walking tour guide. Ruth Alsher Green, that's my grandma. Helps visitors to see the Big Apple, as few others do. I don't wear pants on stream, that's right. Yeah, well, basically because I knew I was opening the door. I didn't know it was in the hallway. There's a guy called Me who has the only truth about New York, and he also plans to build an arch in case the city turns into Atlantis. Yeah, this was where was this? This was, I think, in the local downtown, like all the way downtown, like local newspaper. Yeah. So, yeah. So she was a school teacher for most of her life, and then she did walking tours later in life. And if you want, to look up some like old history, you can look up her name and see what you find. Yeah, there's some history there. But yeah, that's only for people who really want to go looking. Okay, where were we? Yeah, so all these arguments from Kukla, which I find completely ludicrous, and I know they're bringing them up because the authors also find them ludicrous. This argument does not hold, however, as tourists do not live in cities they visit, so the type of experiences that are valuable for tourists need not include the type of shaping that arises from spatial agency. City tours need not be deficient as a result of their inability to facilitate spatial agency. So yeah, because the tourist is not trying to be in the place in the same way as an inhabitant, why would you hold them to the same standards? Yeah. A more plausible way to explain why city tours might be wrongful is to consider Kukla's account of how knowledge of a city is generated. Kukla claims that knowledge of a city cannot be acquired through the testimony of others. I mean, this is one of those things I can't tell you what it is, you have to experience it. Okay. To know a city does not merely involve knowing propositional content, such as the dates its statues were erected or how to interpret the meaning of certain iconic symbols. Instead, to know a city involves objectual knowledge, which is embodied, active, and aesthetic, experiential engagement with the city, and requires us to have a feel for what it's like to negotiate its rhythms and dynamic patterns. For Kukla, this sort of aesthetic orientation of a city is a skill that takes time to develop, involving practice and repeated exposure, and can only be developed from one's own first-person perspective. Given this account of knowledge, we can construct a case. All right, so this is just an embodied argument against tourism. Tourism doesn't give you the actual lived experience because the way you're engaging with the city is not how the city actually is experienced. You're getting like a, what's it called? You're in a resort. You're not actually experiencing the place. You're in a resort. And it's like, well, I went to Mexico. No, you went to a resort in Mexico. You're not actually dealing with anything outside of a resort. It's like going to Disneyland and saying you went and you saw Florida. Well, did you see any Florida? You said, oh, no, I only stayed in Disneyland. It's like, well, okay, you saw Disneyland, not Florida. I can see the point here. I don't think it's a very good point, but like, yeah. This is what the author says. Given the account of knowledge, we can construct a case for what is wrong with city tours, according to Kukla. Passivity, lack of autonomy, and misrepresentation seem a direct result of the fact that city tours are mediated experiences. They are designed and conducted by someone other than the person who is trying to know the city, and so cannot be first personal. Kukla assumes that city tours consist merely of the transmission of testimonial knowledge, which is passively accepted by the tourist. In these tours, the tourist's experiences are directed by someone else, and so are non-autonomous. Furthermore, tours only present a partial and time-limited view of the city, thus misrepresenting the city's identity. As a result, these tours cannot provide objectual knowledge and are therefore epistemically disvaluable. What follows, we reject the criticism that tours are epistemically disvaluable. We argue that 1, instead of being merely passive, tourists can be active when receiving testimonial knowledge in city tours, and 2, city tours also provide objectual knowledge that can be autonomously acquired and does not necessarily misrepresent the city's identity. Thank you for the follow. In our discussion, we focus on the example of guided walking tours. However, in the conclusion, we consider the implications of how to extend our argument to other types of city tours. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, I already disagree with the way they presented Kukla's argument. The normal standard for writing philosophy papers is, here's the issue, here's like the argument that, like, this is one argument and this is what we're going to criticize. The idea is that you give the person you're going to criticize a fair shake so that their position seems plausible, or at least not crazy. And that way you can say, look, even if you have this non-crazy position, there's a better way to go. And they did okay here. It's just like, but I mean, I have something to say about this. Like I said, family history on this one. I'm in a city that has a lot of tourists. And so it's like, this is something that I've considered. So yeah. The fact that city tours are guided plays an important role in the criticism that these tours make tourists passive and non-autonomous. The epistemic value of city tours is therefore influenced by the presence of the tour guide. The tour guide fulfills the role of mediating any knowledge that is gained by the tourist, curating and controlling the tourist's experiences, and interpretations of the city. I mean, any knowledge that you get, like, really? Is the tour guide really controlling all the knowledge someone receives? That's weird. Well, not weird. It's excessive. If I'm on a tour with somebody else, they are telling me certain things, but they are not controlling where I look at all times. They may point something out. Look over here. This is interesting. You should look at this. This is important for this reason. That doesn't stop me from looking away, looking at other things, looking at the context. Like the idea that the tour guide is in like any knowledge, mediating all knowledge is excessive. Okay. In his influential view of the role of tour guides, Eric Cohen identifies two main roles as a mentor and a pathfinder. In the next section, we discuss further the tour guide's role as a pathfinder, but for now, we focus on the role of mentor. The tour guide in this role is a transmitter of knowledge. There are two dimensions to this role. First, the tour guide selects the information that is transmitted to the tourist, choosing what is shown of the place. Second, the tour guide is not only selects the content of the tour, but interprets the information that they have selected, giving specific meanings to what the visitors see and hear. And I'm sitting here explaining something, trying to do the best fucking job I can, like explain the philosophy. And it's like, you know what I'm doing right here? I am trying to do the best job I can, leading Twitch chat and anyone else out there watching, eventually on YouTube, through what is going on in philosophy. It's like, am I the end-all be-all of knowledge in philosophy? Hell fucking no. But I am doing my best job to give you guys an opportunity, and as quite often, chat tells me stuff I don't know and, adds to it. So it's like, this is anytime you're doing this sort of thing where you're transmitting knowledge, it's like, am I in complete control of what chat thinks? No. Are they going to notice things I miss? Yes. Sort of eye of the needle stuff? Yeah. It's like, it's a really fine line here that they're trying to take. It's like, yeah, right through the eye of the needle. Get the point. How you doing, Chocolate? As a mentor, then, the tour guide facilitates a tourist's testimonial knowledge of the city. This type of testimony focuses solely on the transmission of propositional content. Through their testimony, a tour guide controls and mediates the knowledge that is transmitted and how is delivered and interpreted. As we will argue in Section 3, tour guides do not only transmit testimonial knowledge of a city, but they can also facilitate objectual knowledge. First, however, we reject the claim that a tour guide's testimony renders the tourist as a passive and non-autonomous recipient of the knowledge. The view that tourists are passive and non-autonomous corresponds with an influential account of testimonial entitlement, anti-reductionism. According to this view, knowledge acquired by testimony is easy to come by. All you need to do is listen to what you're being told. We don't need to check on the facts ourselves. We can just go ahead and believe on mere say-so. If this understanding of testimony is correct, then the tourist who relies on testimony to acquire their knowledge of a city would indeed be passive, relying on the intentions of another agent. However, there is good reason to reject the anti-reductionist view. In general, testimony itself is widely accepted as a valuable form of knowledge transmission that may uncover previously unavailable knowledge, or foster expressive social values of accuracy and sincerity. More specifically, regarding city tours, it is possible to show that tourists are active both in receiving knowledge through testimony and in producing the testimonial knowledge that is exchanged. To begin with, merely receiving testimony still involves active participation on behalf of the tourist. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are just trying to listen to me and not think about anything I'm saying, I mean, it's going to be hard. Like, you have to, interact. You have to interact with philosophy. Otherwise, you're just not going to get anything out of it. So it's like, this is all the sort of a very similar sort of thing. If you're trying to find your way through like a philosophical paper, a thesis, whatever, you have to think about it. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. You have to do this. Otherwise, you're just sort of listening to the words, and which is fine. You can get something out of it, but it's very different than trying to what the hell does this actually mean? Like, does this even make sense? Okay. Being part of a guided tour involves listening to this paper. The wording isn't bad, but it's just unusual in that the topic is not something I talk about usual. So it's not usually what I'm talking about. So I'm expecting to go one way and it's going a different way. It's not that hard, but it's a little, I'm getting a little thrown off here. Being part of a guided tour involves listening to the content of the information and applying the content to an interpretation of the object that is being discussed. There are two aspects to this activity of listening and understanding. First, the tourist very simply has a choice to pay attention and focus on the information and activities that are being shared by the tour guide. As Jonas Larson and Jane Whitfeld-Megid have explained, tourists can log on and off during city tours, alternating between attentive and absent practices. Second, over and above merely paying attention, a tourist has the choice to actively attempt to understand what is being said. Yeah, so it's like, again, you don't have to pay attention, but you can pay attention. You have the choice. Understanding is widely accepted to be more cognitively demanding than merely receiving information, requiring active participation from the receiving agent. If this is the case, then understanding the information and interpretation shared by the tour guide requires at least some active participation from the tourist. For example, if a tour guide explains the relevance of certain symbols on a statue, in order to appreciate this, a tourist will have to listen to that information and then apply it to the statue they see in front of them. It could be that one of the relevant symbols is on the side of the statue furthest away from where the tourist is standing, and so to grasp the information that is being shared, the tourist might have to move to the other side. Yeah, so you can imagine you have to like move around and like see stuff. And that's actually important. There's something about art where they talk about this. Like if there's a sculpture, you have to move around it. In the city, again, this is talking about sculpture or like a plaque. This is, again, you're supposed to have to, you're in some sense, to go read the plaque, to go see something, you have to move around. You have to be in the position in the space that was intended to see it. Or not even intended, like, but you have to be in a certain spot. It's not just so passive. Like if you have to be like, oh, you can only see this from this angle, you have to go stand where the other people stood to see that thing. The reasonable recipient of testimonial information does not merely passively accept what they are being told, but actively participates in the transmission of the knowledge. As opposed to anti-reductionism, reductionism holds that testimony is only reasonably trusted if there is some positive non-testimonial evidence to support the credibility of the information that is shared. This non-testimonial evidence may take the form of first-hand observations, cognitive reasoning, and memory. In this way, a tourist only reliably accepts the testimony of the tour guide if they have reason to trust the tour guide and the information that is being shared. If you guys are old like me and remember the movie Road Trip, with was Adam Green? What's his name? Tom Green. Yeah, Tom Green. He is a tour guide at Ithaca College, and he's just telling like bad information, and all the people start getting angry with him. And that's the setup for the movie, is that he has no idea what he's talking about as a tour guide for Ithaca College. And he's like, well, I can tell you something about Ithaca College. And then he goes into the story of Road Trip. Yeah. Well, yes, Chocolate Mint, we're reading a paper on tourism. This is the epistemic value of city tours, how to know a city. So it's like, yeah. Well, and to situate this, to be like, philosophical, there is an aesthetic, there's a paper on aesthetics, basically. How is it that you are, to understand what it is like to be in a place in like the aesthetic terms? I made the comparison like when you have to move around a sculpture. Well, you have to move around a city to see different angles of it too. And so this is overlaps with like aesthetic criticism. So, philosophy of art and philosophy of city and place. So, yeah, this is the stuff. I like this stuff. Neil Levy similarly argues that testimony should be considered as interactive. In Levy's view, the good knower is someone who has the ability to think with others, discerning when to defer to testimony, whose testimony to rely on, and thinking independently about the testimony received. As such, when testimony forms part of knowledge generation, an epistemic agent necessarily plays an active role in how that knowledge is acquired. Yeah, it's like, you can be like, I've gone on a tour and I've had a bad tour guide. Oh God. I had a tour guide that was like an apologist for slavery, and the people I was with, we were just like starting to laugh at the person, like, trying to like keep it quiet, but it was just like, what's wrong with you? Bad tour guide. Like, she just didn't quite know what she was talking about. It was like a slavery apologist. Like, you have no business giving tours. And it's like she knew some things, but it was just like, it was just basically her walking us around at that point. Yeah, that was in New Orleans. That was a bad tour. Okay, Kukla's account of the passivity and lack of autonomy found in city tourists largely corresponds with the critical view of tourism which has been widespread in sociology and philosophy. However, it is now increasingly accepted within tourism studies that tourists actively participate in the exchange of testimonial knowledge. Tourists are not merely passive, they choose where to travel and which activities to book. These choices are not random or unreasoned, since tourists spend a great deal of time researching their destination and the kind of activities in which they would like to participate. In fact, tourists often seek self-realization, and many reject passive experiences in favor of active urban exploration. Yeah, I mean, if you go to New York, there's plenty of stuff to see, so everything you choose, even if you're doing the most touristy things, are part of your personal choice, because you could always be doing something else. You shouldn't assume that everyone just goes to the Empire State Building. I mean, some people do, but not everyone does it, and it's like, okay, you didn't go see the Empire State Building. So fucking what? It doesn't matter. Like, it's cool. Tourism studies, someone on? Yes. There's studies on everything, and believe me, the amount of money that goes into tourism, you better believe the business people out there care about this. Tourism is a huge business, and so the idea that, like, there isn't a tourism studies, if there wasn't one, I'd be shocked. But I mean, think about the hotel business, stadiums, and theme parks. This is all tourism. Like, why people go to places and then what they do. Like, I'm sure there is a massive amount of, like, stuff in this. The Daleks did. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you gotta research places. What was that? That Doctor Who, they're coming to take over or whatever. But, like, what's up, Dame Karen? How are you? Yeah, it's like things you might not expect. But, like hotel management. If you don't know how big a business hotel management is a huge, like, there's huge business. So it's like, this is the sort of thing. Like, I didn't realize when I was a kid that, like, being a hotel manager, I was like, hotel manager? It's like, okay, you're a manager. Cool. No, you're a hotel manager. You could be a really high-powered person being a hotel manager. Like, that's a fancy job. Look, Chocolate Mint says a local college has a pretty well-known hospitality department. Yeah, hospitality department, exactly. They run sort of a sample hotel, and I think host visitors to campus. Exactly. Like, if you want to get into, like, hospitality, like, this is massive, huge business. So, like, yeah. Daleks, according to Dr. Hoover's, built the Empire State Building. Oh, I did not know that. That's cool. Thank you, Daleks. I appreciate that. Yeah. Things I don't know. Okay. Besides choosing to engage their attention and activating the cognitive skills for understanding and assessing the tour guide's reliability, active epistemic engagement is highlighted by the way in which tourists regularly engage in participatory practices. For instance, as Larson and Megid explain, tourists regularly interrupt the guide, asking questions and making comments on the facts explained by the guide. Tourists often answer questions directly at them by the guide, and can even correct the guide and challenge the guide's authority. This makes tourists de facto co-producers of the content of the guide tour, emphasizing the tour guide as a facilitator rather than the sole producer of the knowledge that is acquired. Yeah, I mean, not everyone, if you've ever been on a walking tour, a lot of times they're expecting a little bit of a conversation. The conceptual frameworks explaining the role of tour guides have been revised and developed to acknowledge the complex role of facilitator of reciprocal interaction with the active tourists. For example, Cohen has expanded his view to define a guide whose aim is not merely to transmit knowledge and guide through certain locations, but to promote debate and discussion with tourists. Similarly, tour guides are defined as storytellers who portray their knowledge of the city through engaging stories, and also cultural brokers who mediate between the audience and local culture they are visiting. Yeah, I mean, you'll see there's way more options for engaging with local cultures now. In these more progressive and complex accounts, the tourist is not merely passive, but is actively engaged in a conversation with the tour guide, other tourists, and the city. Yeah, I mean, I know people have visited New York and seen me, and, like, we've hung out, and they're not from big urban centers. They're from, rural areas of the world. And they get to New York and they're, like, freaking out, and, like, they're asking me questions and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's like, and they're, like, looking up, they just end up, like, looking up at all the big buildings for a while because they're very tall buildings. And it's like, okay, like, but then they want to, like, engage with stuff. It's like, they see me as, like, oh, things. Like, I know a little bit of shit. Like, that's it. But it's like, yeah, it's like, what are you actually selling? You're selling this, like, New York vision, and, like, they get to hang out with, like, New Yorkers in town. It's like, yeah, like, that's part of it. It's not like that they're just like getting information. It's like they're dealing with people in New York as New Yorkers. And even in like Midtown, you're getting some of like the crazy New York still. Like there's still crazy New Yorkers around. It is. I mean, yeah, they're around. Like this, back when DMX died, was it last year, 2 years ago? There was a guy singing a DMX song and asking for money. And the tourists didn't know who DMX was, which is unfortunate. He is a very talented rapper from the New York area. He was not from New York City, he was from Yonkers. But he's a very talented rapper. He had some problems and then he cleaned himself up. It was basically good. What's up? Oh, everyone trying to make me drunk now? All right. So I laugh at the guy. I'm like, dude, the tourists don't know who DMX is. I know it's sad. And he's like, yeah, man, no one give me no money. I was like, yeah. But like the idea that you got like some local beggar asking for money singing DMX, it's like, okay, the people are still experiencing like local rap hip hop culture a little bit in Midtown Manhattan, even if they didn't understand what was going on. So, yeah. Okay. Continuing. Although city tours consist of a tour guide's transmission of testimonial knowledge, we have argued that this exchange does not necessarily render the tourist as passive and non-autonomous, given that testimony often requires the active engagement of the tourist's attention, and that testimonial knowledge is often actively co-produced by the tourist. As such, city tours are not necessarily passive epistemic agents, but have the potential to actively engage in the generation of their knowledge. Objectual knowledge. To know a city does not merely involve knowing propositional content. As we have explained, Kukla claims that a city is known through objectual knowledge, which is necessarily first personal. It is implied that the generation of this objectual knowledge is not possible in city tours because they are directed by someone else, consist in the transmission of testimony, and only offer a partial and often misleading view of the city. In this section, we argue that city tours can transmit valuable objectual knowledge of a city. First, we show that being physically guided does not necessarily diminish a tourist's autonomy. We then argue that the partiality involved in knowing a city is widespread and does not necessarily entail an epistemic flaw or misrepresentation of the city's identity. Yeah. I mean, this is what I was saying before, that there is partiality in knowing the city, and that's widespread. Objectual here does not mean objective. They are, I think, arguing for an embodied version of knowledge. And so objectual means the way you physically interact with the object that is the city. And so it's not something I can tell you, it's how you have to physically be in the space. So it's an embodied way to move around. So that's what I think they mean by objectual here. One of the things that happened last year was I was taking the subway and I really wasn't thinking about it, and I got off in the right spot and I ended up where I was supposed to be, and I was like, God damn, I don't remember like the subway ride or getting off or like taking the right stairs. I just was like not looking and I went to the right place. I was like, God damn it, I've been here too long. Like I just took like a subway ride and I don't know how I got from point A to point B, but I did it like without thinking. And I was like, oh God, like I really have been here too long. But like, yeah, it was like, I was showing someone how to get to a place. I was just like, just come with me. It's like, I won't explain, just go. It's like, it's a few stops away. So I was because I was going nearby. And so like I go here and then like where I let them out, like it opened up onto right where they knew. They're like, oh my God, I'm here. I was like, yeah, I told you I'd take you there. And they were like, how'd you get me like to right where I knew where I was? I was like, don't worry about it. In the previous section, we focused on Cohen's description of the tour guide as a mentor and as a transmitter of propositional knowledge. Cohen also claims that the tour guide adopts the role of a pathfinder as a geographic guide who not only takes visitors to specific locations, but who leads tourists through an environment in which his followers lack orientation or through a socially defined territory to which they have no access. Yes, like the subway system. As such, the tour guide shapes and facilitates the way in which tourists orient themselves in the city by providing access to certain locations and navigation through different sites and routes, and modeling how to interact with these sites. The tour guide therefore acts as a facilitator and mediator of a tourist's embodied and aesthetic objectual knowledge of the city as termed by Kukla. Yeah, and so this is the issue, is like, if you're in the New York City subway, do you know where the different maps are, because there's a few different models of a subway car. Now, I know where the maps are in the different cars. Like, some of them have like digital readouts. They have different kinds of readouts. Some of them don't have that. They have the old style little like sort of stickers that are horizontal in the middle of the train. The other ones have them on the side of the train. Like, I know where this stuff is. So if I was with tourists, I'd say you could look there, you could see there. Like, that would be part of the orientation of how to read a map in a subway car. So it's like, these are things that if I was showing people around, it's like, well, you have to look, here's a map, there's a map. It's a different car. The maps are in different spots. And this would be the embodied interactions. Like, I can recognize the different cars and where to look. Okay. It is objected by Kukla, though, that the pathfinder role of the tour guide results in the possibility for tourists to remain passive rather than autonomously navigating around a city, practicing and learning the relevant aesthetic skills that are involved in the acquisition of objectual knowledge. Letting oneself be led by a tour guide rather than find one's own way is the epitome of negatively critiqued non-autonomous city tourist. Yeah, so if you don't look and you don't care, then you're the bad person. I mean, that's fair. Against this view, we argue that a tourist who partakes in city tours does not necessarily lack autonomy when generating objectual knowledge of a city. To begin with, a tourist will usually have chosen a tour with a certain itinerary, making an active decision about which parts of the city they want to orient themselves within and learn how to navigate. Yet, this is another thing. My cousin has been running Airbnbs for years. He has an Airbnb in Brooklyn at the moment. He's in Bushwick. Why did he choose to get that one? Bushwick is a popular area of the city because it's like the hip area at the moment. So when people want to hang out there, they read his reviews, and people reviews of my cousin are like, authentic New Yorker, knows what's going on. You ask him all the stuff and he knows. It's like, yeah, like this is what they want. They go to his Bushwick place because they feel like they're getting the authentic experience there. And like which parts of the city to go to, where the good restaurants are, like that sort of stuff. Okay. As we have noted in the previous section, it is now commonly understood that tourist choices do not simply respond to what they are told they should experience, but instead correspond to their own self-perception and sense of agency. Furthermore, we suggest that tours have the potential to enhance autonomy for some tourists. A walking tour provides a relatively safe way to explore a city, which is especially important for those who systematically feel unsafe in the way they navigate the city. The paradigmatic example of the active and autonomous tourist is Walter Benjamin's flaneur. I think that there was actually just Walter Benjamin, I don't know. Flaneur, who is traditionally a male, white, able-bodied individual who can use his privileged position to roam aimlessly through the city and engage with its inhabitants. Yeah, I mean, I'm a white guy. I can walk around mostly. I mean, of course, there's parts of the city where I'm the minority, but for the most part, I am left alone. There have been cases where I've walked right up to some police action I probably was way too close to, and I didn't realize that there was like a crowd being held back. And they're like, why does that white guy get to get so close and take a look? And I'm like, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Because like there were literally like, you know, minorities being like trying to take better photos. Hey, Lumpy, how you been? I'm sorry I've been missing your streams. I've just been out on the town when you've been streaming. So I'll give Lumpy a shout out. Lumpy has been doing lots of streams lately. I was actually on your raid today, I think, but I got there within like the last minute. I didn't even say anything. Yeah, able-bodied. As I mentioned doing, if you were to look... so everyone go give Lumpy a follow. If you don't know Lumpy, he streams Minecraft, but he's been doing some philosophy, and he has good just chatting streams, so yeah. Adam says, as you mentioned doing, if you were to look away during a guided tour at some non-tourist context and form a negative opinion judgment, for example, you notice people living under a bridge, then later, based on a guided tourist context, you come to form a good opinion, say, by taking into account some directed angle or perspective on a subject like a statue or building. Now, given both multiple opinions, which of my opinions should I consider when engaging in an environment? Well, that would be your agency there, Adam. Like, of course, you have to make an overall decision. Okay. Sorry about the ad, Lumpy. Wait, am I getting mid-roll ads now? Really? Mid-roll ads. I mean... I thought I had it turned off. Sorry, Lumpy. But, like, that's really annoying. Like, this is one of the annoying things about Twitch. They will not tell you if they upgrade their stuff. Yeah. You okay? Go. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go back to work tomorrow. I'm a little anxious, but things should be okay. Things will be fine. Every time I've gone away and thought things were broken when I get back, they were broken when I got back, but it wasn't that bad. Like, and not that it wasn't badly broken. It was just that it didn't matter. It's like, well, I was on vacation. It's like now it's someone else. It was some problem. No, it's for you. Well, you're subbed, and I appreciate that. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, like I understand. Like in my area, I can walk around and like not be worried about stuff. But again, that's like, context. Nodders. I agree. It comes down to my interpretation, collective ideas, opinions. Dame Karen says, seeing people trying to survive in the snow just down the road from the White House blew your mind. Yeah. Like, DC, like, the U.S. is weird. We do not take care of our own people very well. And so the idea that, like, we could have, like, the White House, which is all the power in the entire country, focused on, and then, like, there's, homeless people that need housing. And, like, right there, and, like, it's winter. It's not good. So one of the things about New York is like we have drug addicts and stuff, and so it's like you might end up seeing people nodding off. When I was thinking about the nodders, like literally heroin addicts like falling asleep, and so that does happen. It's a little worse now. It was not so bad recently, but I think with the economy going down, more drug use is happening. But yeah, it's like if you see that, you get a certain opinion. But like if you're doing tourist stuff, a lot of times you don't see it. Like, oh, when Aris came. Aris was in Midtown and he was like, everything is so clean and like nice and like shiny and like people are cool. I'm like, yeah, you're in Midtown where there's like clean shit and like it's like fancy people. Like it's expensive. Like we were on like Fifth Avenue or something. Like the expensive stores and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's like you will if you see that, but like that happened to be where we were. But then you go other places and you will see bad things like. Generally, you won't see like the old like 70s style bad, but there'll still be drug addicts. There'll still be unhoused folks. And a lot of these people also have mental problems. That's the reason why they, are where they are. And so you'll realize, okay, this person is not just like living on the streets. They are also they need help. So it's like we should get them help somehow, but I don't know how to do it. Okay. So yeah, so this is the issue. I'm this guy who can just walk around New York because I know how to do it at this point. And I could probably walk around some other, similar cities to New York without problems. Okay. Unlike the male flaneur, many women feel like they cannot wander alone and unnoticed in cities, making this sort of independent exploration unattainable. Racialized people often report feeling unsafe in certain destinations, as is the case for many African American tourists in South Carolina, for instance. With approximately 70 countries worldwide still criminalizing homosexuality and by extension visible queerness, including transness, walking alone in the streets of certain cities can be life-threatening enterprise for people in the LGBTQI+ community. As such, the facilities and mediation that is offered by tour guides provides a valuable way for many tourists who cannot or feel like they cannot navigate a city individually to acquire both objective knowledge of the city, effectively enhancing their autonomy. Basic healthcare would probably help, plus mental health care. Most countries are lacking on this. Yes, we should get on that here in the U.S. Yeah, we should. The tour guide's facilitation of a tourist's objective knowledge is also valuable because it can provide access to parts of a city that a tourist did not have access to before due to public restriction or accessibility issues. For example, a tour guide... For example, a tour guide might uncover little-known places that reveal important features of the city. But also importantly, it might only be possible for physically disabled travelers to access certain parts of a city by following a pre-designed itinerary with a guide who is familiar with the accessible routes. For example, people with sight impairments report a richer experience of the visual arts in museums and galleries through the use of guided visits. In these instances, the tour guide not only facilitates a tourist aesthetic experience of a city, but provides access to it as a condition of possibility, thus also enhancing, not diminishing, their autonomy. Yeah, so my grandma, who I just showed you a picture of, got some important friends by the end of her life, and she was able to get like special access to certain things at times, and all of a sudden you're going to see things that you would not otherwise have access to. And it's like, well, okay, yes, you had a tour guide, but you probably wouldn't have been able to even get that tour guide or be on that tour without being friends with the other person. So yeah, it happens. Okay, Kukla does discuss extensively how urban design can restrict a person's spatial agency due to their gender, race, sexual identity, ability, and age. However, due to their critical epistemological stance with regard to city tourism, Kukla does not recognize that city tours can be a valuable way to acquire knowledge of a city because of these restrictions. In some cases, as we have stated, city tours might be the only way for certain tourists to acquire this knowledge. Besides lack of autonomy, the second obstacle that Kukla raises for the transmission of objectual knowledge in city tours is that they offer a partial representation of the city, so misrepresenting the city's identity. Indeed, Kukla is right that the objectual knowledge gained through the mediation of the tour guides is partial. The guided tour merely functions as a way to acquire an initial understanding, which will always be more fully appreciated the longer one stays and engages with the city. But partiality itself does not justify Kukla's denial of the possibility of acquiring objectual knowledge. For example, the meaning of a tourist utterance, "I know Buenos Aires," after attending a day-long city walking tour, does not have the same meaning as the same statement uttered by a long-term resident. But the statement makes more sense uttered by the tourist than by someone who has never been to Buenos Aires. The tourist has some objectual knowledge of after following a city tour, in virtue of being better able to orient herself around a city than she was prior following the tour. I mean, I watched Starship Troopers, so I know Buenos Aires. Moreover, denying the value of partial knowledge of the city is in contradiction with Kukla's own claim of objectual knowledge always being a matter of degree and never complete. None of us, well, quote, none of us will ever experience a place from every possible perspective, and none of us therefore can have complete knowledge of a place, end quote. Partial knowledge of a city is widely experienced and does not render the knower epistemically flawed or automatically entail that one misrepresents the city's identity. Yeah, so many bugs, exactly. Most long-term residents also have objectual knowledge of only certain parts of a city. Suppose, for example, that Alejandra lives in San Telmo, now a middle-class neighborhood of Buenos Aires, and she can navigate that area competently. Nevertheless, she may be completely lost if she is dropped off by taxi in the affluent area of Caballito, even more lost if she accidentally falls asleep on the bus and arrives in one of the suburban slums. Alejandra has objectual knowledge only of a physically delimited part of the city, but is nevertheless her city and one she can claim she knows. Yeah, like, don't put me in Queens. I have not really been to Queens that many times, all considering. Like, don't put me in Queens. I don't understand Queens. I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. I'll know like one or two like small spots in Queens. Like, do not put me in Queens. I don't understand. They use a fucking weird ass numbering system for the streets. So like, it's not even like, it doesn't even make sense to me. I know, fuck you. I know there is a method to the madness. And once you understand it, like, you can figure out what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't even care to learn at this point. I mean, maybe I'll have to one day. But like, yeah, like, don't put me in Queens. I don't understand. As Kukla acknowledges, objectual knowledge of a city goes beyond geographical orientation and includes having an embodied interaction with the city. Objectual knowledge is also partial in the sense as one's circumstances may offer different and unique perspectives of the city. For example, even though Alejandra might know Buenos Aires better than Micah, Alejandra's knowledge of Buenos Aires is generated by her own perspective and experiences. As a wheelchair user, Micah might have experience of Buenos Aires accessibility points in a way that Alejandra could never experience. As such, Alejandra's experience of the city is always indexed to her own perspective. Considering that objectual knowledge of a city is partial, city tours cannot be epistemically flawed merely in virtue of offering partial knowledge. In fact, as described above, city tours are an important way to acquire partial knowledge of this sort for certain groups that could not acquire it otherwise. I mean, this should have been obvious, and they even called Kukla out here. You're a tourist. You might as well be called New York City handicapped. That's the whole point. You are a tourist. That's what it means. You are not experienced. You are visiting us. That is your handicap. You are learning from the tour guide. Kukla's characterization of city tours, yeah, like, you're differently abled. You fail to know New York. That's your failure of ability. You should know better. Everyone should understand New York completely. Sorry, it's very stupid. Okay, Kukla's characterization of city tours implicitly assumes that the tour guide's partiality regarding what to share and what with the tour participants misrepresents the city's identity dynamism. This stance, though, overlooks that a tour happens in the city and accommodates interaction with the city. While being led through a specific route or path, a tourist will interact with and have a feel for the place, experiencing and acquiring and understanding what it's like to walk across certain roads and stand in particular areas of the city. A tour is an embodied experience of the city, which can very well incorporate itself into the dynamics of the city. Where was I? I was looking at a fucking tour guide. Oh, I was in Brooklyn. And some tour guide was leading a bunch of tourists around Williamsburg. And he was pointing stuff out at them, and I couldn't see what it was. It was like in behind some wall. I was just like, what are you doing? Like, tourists of Williamsburg. Like, okay, but yes, they wanted to see Williamsburg, where the hipsters live, and it's not even hipsters anymore because it's too expensive. It's yuppies and foodies. But it's like, yeah, and he was pointing stuff out about the history of Williamsburg. Okay, as Jonathan Wynn explains, walking tours often provide serendipitous moments of interaction with the city and its inhabitants, facilitated and navigated by the tour guide. For example, Wynn collects stories from tour guides who recall city residents who have passed by and interrupted a tour to haggle with the tour guide, or have had their tour groups invited into private homes by residents. Some tour guides do not have pre-designed itineraries and so modify their itineraries during the tour itself. This can be done as a response to the current circumstances of the city or as a response to the active engagement of the tourists. Wynn does not see these examples as exceptions, but instead claims that tours constitute a special, quote, disposition to such interactions, end quote. Regardless of how common these serendipities and improvisations are, they are examples of the thickest mode of interaction that tourists can have with the city and its residents during a walking tour. The real Mr. Weird. What are we talking about? We're talking about what it is to take a tour of a city, and is it bad to take a tour of the city? So there's an argument that tours are just sort of like bad experiences of like, that's not really how to experience a city. And these authors are pushing back against that. They're saying, look, you're always going to get a partial view, even in the best circumstances of a city. And if you're only going to be there for a few days, this is a way to get a view of a city. And there's no reason why this one is particularly bad. Any view you get is going to be limited. So we're talking about, what's the value of tourism? Chocolate says, they say cab drivers have pretty extensive knowledge of the streets. They do before and after brain scans them. They call it the knowledge. Yeah, it's a London thing. Yeah. That's a famous thing in London because of, all the old roads there, that it's hard to actually know where you're going and where to be. What do I think so far? Well, I completely agree with the authors so far. As far as the paper goes, it's well structured. It's not very excitingly done, but it was set up in a very sort of academically standard way, and it's an okay paper, and I completely agree with them. I mean, I'm in New York, and I was just showing people earlier, my grandma was a tour guide in Lower Manhattan, so I've thought about this stuff some, and I think the criticisms here are ludicrous. So it's like, if you have and being in New York, you deal with tourists a bit. I'm not out in part where you don't deal with tourists. So it's yeah. Adam says, oh yeah, so bias, exactly. Or do you mean having expert knowledge, Mr. Weird? Adam says, so see, only if I thought the restricted area were valuable knowledge to me, right? So even if one had exclusive access to a restricted area, for example, one might not care about seeing never before seen art hidden away inside the Vatican, even given access. So the scope presupposes a key idea interest. Why am I interested in being there or guided? Yeah. So that was the issue. It's they made the point earlier that even if you're taking a guided tour, you chose that guided tour. It's not like there was only one guided tour in New York. Thank you for the follow. There's a huge number of things you could have done in any given place, unless you're in a really small place, and then you made the choice to go there. But if you're in New York, there are any number of things you could do, and so the fact that you chose to see these things at this time with these people, that is actually an act of autonomy. And then once you're on the tour, there are other opportunities, but of course you could be passive then, but you already had selected that specific activity out of a huge amount of other things you could have been done. Your mom was a tour guide? Okay, there you go. Yeah, so you understand. There is something to this. My grandma got so many offers to go visit people. She had people come back. They'd hang out with her whenever they were in New York. This is yeah, it's a thing. Okay, continuing. We're getting towards the end of this anyway. Even when tours lack this serendipity and improvisation, tours are, at the very least, walking through the streets of that city and interacting with it in a thin way. Whether the interaction is thick or thin, they provide examples of first personal acquisition of objectual knowledge, that's the embodied knowledge, that is facilitated by the tour guide. Hey, Rethius, how are you? It's going well. I mean, I've got a paper that I agree with. I think it's okay. It's not like super exciting philosophy, but it's like a nice counter argument against, I think some silly objections that were made against tourism. So it's like, what is good about tourism? What is the paper in a nutshell? What is good about walking tours? That's what it is. Because people were saying walking tours are, stupid and you don't get anything real out of it. And then they're saying, this paper saying, no, you can get some real experiences out of it. You get to learn something. Okay. Let me know if you have any more questions, but that's the short version. Okay. It could be argued that even though a tourist does interact with the city, this type of interaction is not sufficient to offer an accurate representation of the city. Yeah, that's an interesting topic for a deep take. I like this. I mean, the paper is here if you want to take a look, free download, but so. You love this kind of shit? Yeah, read this. I keep showing this. I went and grabbed this from around the hall. My grandma was a tour guide in Lower Manhattan, so this is an old article from 1990 we had laminated. So I was yeah. When Muffin and Muffin and Lumpy visited Prague, we walked 20 kilometers per day. Yeah, see, that's cool. Yeah, see, in everyday stuff you want to take a microscope to, and this is borderline aesthetics. If they're treating the city like an artwork, basically. How are you interacting with it? How do you see all the different parts of it? What's good about that? Of course, you can passively just stand in front of a painting and be oh yes, I see the colors, but that misses the point. And it's the tour guide can help you to see the painting better, like a docent at a museum can say, look at the interesting parts of the painting. Same thing with the tour guide in the city. Also when someone from a country without a private gun ownership, I'm not exploring anywhere by myself walking around. Yeah. I mean, most places in the U.S. are pretty safe. I stress that, all of this country is very big, even though there is gun violence. It's not it's so prevalent over most of the country, but yeah. So it's making you feel like you're actually changing your mind and walking tours. You have to get the right one, Rexler. That's the thing. You don't just go on the silly walking tour that you're oh, the touristy one. You get the one that is customized to you. There's a lot of stuff nowadays, and so it's yeah, you can just do the very basic one. You might not like that so much, but then there's going to be other ones that may cover things you like. You want to know? No, I think Dame Karen doesn't want to be around guns, is what they were saying. So, yeah. It's they're yeah. Well, Dame Karen can explain themselves if they want to. Okay. Okay, it could be argued that even though a tourist does interact with the city, this type of interaction is not sufficient to offer an accurate representation of the city. Kukla seemed to make such a claim, one distinguishing between passive tourism and spatial agency, the latter of which enables long-term city residents and the city to mutually shape each other. This allows city residents to radically change the meaning of specific locations through their prolonged interactions with the place. Yeah. So... Like I was saying, that's why I was saying, I don't think we are, it's not, we have problems here, but, it's not that crazy. Adam says, well, if it's hidden or restricted area, I might choose it based on curiosity. It's not until I actually see it would I, at that moment, say, now I'm interested or now not. But that's after you saw it. My choice to pick a guide was based on a guess that I'd be interested. I might have all negative opinions in that case. Had it turned out that I wasted my time, nothing was interesting to you. Yeah, but I mean, then why do you even travel? I mean, of course you could go to a place and hate everything about the place, but then you should have picked someplace else. And maybe you get unlucky with the tour guide and you hate the tour guide, but that's always a risk, Adam. It's you could always have a bad experience. Usually you don't, but it's always a possibility. Reethi says, shootings happened. Last night my wife and I went downtown Salt Lake City and saw Hamilton and a couple of idiots got into a gunfight over nothing at a bar close to where you were after you left. Yeah. And you want to know what's fun about New York? New York is so ridiculously safe now that don't even make top lists for dangerous stuff, and gun violence is often directed random gun violence almost like is very rare here. So the idea that like a random like innocent person gets shot is like very low in New York. So there are still the people that get shot, but you know, it's domestic problems or gangs that are shooting each other. And so it's like that is people who knew each other. So if you're visiting, you're not getting shot. So it's like, yeah. But like you go other places, maybe it's more, but still. Chuckman says some people do urban exploration. Yeah, looking into old buildings, tunnels and stuff. Yeah, there's definitely that around. Yeah, it's not as bad as it's hyped up to be. Yeah, there's a lot of politics here in the U.S. about guns, and the people with the guns, they're doing the hype because they know that sells more guns. People want the guns for protection. Then there's more guns around and everything. It's the places like New York where we're just like, we don't care. If you want to go have guns, just get out of the city. Yeah. Game Karen says gun violence hasn't happened here since '96 since you banned them. Also, you're a brown woman. Yeah. So, in that case, the numbers are worse for someone like you to be experienced gun violence here in the U.S. But again, it's still very small. So, yeah. Don't dox yourself if you don't want to. But yes, Australia. Yeah, because they had that bad shooting in '96 and they banned everything. Yep. Rethea's like, yep, get me out of Salt Lake City. Okay. Where were we? Yeah, so if a person living there changes the city and the city changes them, yeah. This can result in a profound rejection or alteration of official and dominant narratives of the identity of a place. For example, due to the traffic jams around the Washington Monument, residents of D.C. often give no significance to the monument beyond its practical nuisance. Yeah, it's like I am more annoyed about stuff like that other people think is cool in New York. Kukla claims that residents' repeated interaction with the monument has resulted in its defetishization, depriving it of its power as of a political symbol for the U.S. government. By contrast, Kukla claims that tourists cannot change the meaning of a place in this way. Tourists are more likely to accept and reaffirm established narratives of the city and are considered to be an obstacle to valuable transformation. Adam says, but you mean for known travel spots, right? I'm worrying about the hidden restricted areas where little knowledge, if any, is known or is leaked about its content. Well, yeah, but like if you're specifically seeking out unknown stuff, then of course there's a higher risk there, Adam. It's like that tours here are about known content. That's what we're talking about in general. If you have some other idea about like some hidden knowledge that you're trying to get a tour of, then you're gambling with that anyway. So yeah. Yeah, after Port Arthur, the ultra conservative PM was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Okay, so yeah, like do tourists reaffirm like the old sort of just like narrative just because that's what they're told? In response, the authors argue that city tours provide a platform for the accurate representation of cities that highlight and encourage social transformation. For example, Wynne claims that the tour guides are able to transform the identity of cities through the creation of stories and by highlighting information and experiences that are often left at the margins of society. I mean, do I feel bad that I've never actually been in the Empire State Building? No. It's just, it's a cool part of the skyline to me, but like I actually don't care. I don't care because I'm here. I could always go. I don't give a fuck. Now, other people are like, ooh, the Empire State Building, let's go. I don't care. That might be a problem on my side. Like, that is a problem for me. Like, I've de-fetishized the Empire State Building as a tourist thing to do. I don't care. But, like, so what? Like, who's right? The historian or me, the person living here? I'm, like, there's somewhere in between, of course. Yeah, vlog it. Exactly, Vipers. No, it's like it's just like I'm not doing it. What's up, Bowser? Like I'm not going over there. It's like everything's like a tourist trap to me. I'm just like, why would I go hang out with tourists? Like, yeah, why would I go hang out with tourists? Okay, one of the funny things that happened was I was at the CUNY Grad Center. I was walking around with some philosophers outside, and I point to a group of like tourists. I go, oh, look at the Americans. And they're like, you're American. I was like, yeah, but I'm from New York. Like, those were like middle America Americans. They were like very stereotypically middle American looking. And they were like, oh my God, how can you say? I was like, look at how different we look. We don't look the same at all. It's like, yeah. I'm surprised you haven't had to go with tourist friends. You know, I only have so many tourist friends that come through. And most of the people are not actually interested in going to the top of the Empire State Building. No, it also costs money. I'm like, I'm not spending everything's exorbitant. So I'm like, I'm not spending that money. Corwin, what's up? It's very healthy. On one hand, building is just a building, but you cannot apply that to everything every day or you risk missing out on all some best parts of life. Building memories has its own value. Exactly. So like, I'm admitting to what Corwin's saying. Like, I may be missing out on like a New York experience. Yeah. So it's like, I know. Like, but like I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter. New York is big. There are lots of stuff to do. You do not do all the things in New York. No one can do that. Okay. So tours can have the effect of making the participants better inhabitants or visitors of the city by being more respectful and knowledgeable of the city's identities. Like, yeah, if you ever want to do something, take a tour of your own place. Like, I've heard people do this and then they're like, oh, I never knew that this park was this way because of this historical thing, and I like it better because of this. Like, there's a park in downtown New York where there's like broken parts of the fence, and apparently this was the fence was from colonial times, and the parts that were broken off were British monarchy symbols. And so that's why the fence is broken, is because the British monarchy symbols were physically like sawed off in spots, and you can still see the saw marks on the fence. Now, like, I could have taken a tour to find that out. I saw it on Reddit, the NYC Reddit or whatever, from a few days ago. But like, would that be better? Like, would I have appreciated that park more? Because I have walked by there, I think. If I knew that, yes. Traitors. Yes. Says the Irish. Okay. We rebelled from the English. And you're calling us traitors? Irish? Really? 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 Okay. Indeed, some tours are intentionally designed to disrupt official narratives and existing norms. For instance, Invisible Cities offer tours in several British cities led by guides who used to be homeless. The guides used to use well-known tour itineraries and content to relate these to their own experiences of homelessness. That's interesting. Here's an interesting tour guide thing. My friend who is half Calabrese was telling me how in Calabria, I don't know how I'm saying these things, you have to go via certain mafia-owned businesses if you want to remain safe. Yeah. Like, one of the guys I used to work with, he used to work for the liquor distributor some of the liquor distributors around here, and the mob controlled certain bars. And so he almost got like chased out like violently when he was trying to sell liquor to people that he was not supposed to be selling liquor to because the mob was controlling the business. And then his liquor company cut a deal with the mob, basically. Like, it was union mob stuff. And then the next time he went back there, he's like, I'm not going back. They're like, just go back. Don't worry about it. He goes back there, and they were like, he was the man. Like, they treated him like a king. And it's like, the part where they nearly beat the fuck out of him was forgotten. Like, it didn't happen. So it's like, you have to, like, there's certain things in certain areas you don't do. It's like, yeah. My pronunciation sounds good to you. Yeah, I guessed Calabrese because I'm from New York and I know things about the Italians. But yeah. It's like, I had one of my brother's friends from high school. His dad was in the mob. And I asked my brother to ask him what he said when anyone asked him what his dad did. And the kid got back. My brother got back to me a few days later. He said no one's ever asked him what his father does. And I didn't. There's two ways to take that. Either it's just never come up, or secondly, everyone knows better than to ask the kid like that. Yeah. So. Okay. The money that I live off of came from a mob deal to fund a casino in the 70s that your family bought in and paid out of. Yeah, it happens. Like, it happens. It's just business sometimes. It's like, yeah, like, certain things are illegal, certain things are not illegal. What counts as illegal in some of these business dealings is not exactly fair. So it's like, and then you go back even farther in history and a lot of shitty stuff happens. A lot of shitty stuff happens now, too. So it's like, yeah. This awareness of homelessness is particularly disruptive in well-known tourist cities such as Edinburgh, where the policy is to remove homeless individuals from the city center. Furthermore, the tour guides relate their own experiences with the accounts of the city's past, for example, relating their own involvement with the authorities when discussing the story of a famous crime in the 19th century. In cases like these, the tour guide does not misrepresent the city, but instead provides accurate knowledge that may otherwise have been silenced. In this way, the mediation offered by the tour guide serves to enforce social transformation by highlighting the diverse and dynamic nature of how a city is experienced and by bringing invisible urban experiences to the fore. Excuse me. I'm actually not sure I should be that honest about it, but I doubt anyone here cares. Yeah. I mean, no one's going to care. And the amount of time, like, if you want me to delete it, unfortunately, it's in chat. Like, it won't go away, but it's like, Edinburgh, however, but Edinburgh. Okay, yeah. Yes, I know I mispronounced that one. But I'm doing Edinburgh, yeah. No, I was doing the stupid US pronunciation. I knew that one, though. Yeah, Edinburgh. Okay. But thank you for the correction. As a result, city tours can provide tourists with valuable testimonial and objectual knowledge of the cities. This knowledge is valuable more generally insofar as we value the acquisition of knowledge. More specifically, the knowledge generated by city tours is not necessarily passive, non-autonomous, or representative as critics suggest. Instead, even though city tours are mediated, they have the potential to generate active first-person knowledge. This is valuable both for the tourist as a credible epistemic agent and for the city as the knowledge generated by the tour can facilitate an accurate representation of the city and engage in social transformation. Conclusion. In this paper, we have argued against the criticism that city tours are epistemically disvaluable. First, we suggested that even though city tours partly consist of the transmission of testimonial knowledge, this does not entail tourist passivity. Instead, tourists can be active when receiving testimonial knowledge. Second, city tours provide a tourist not only with testimonial knowledge, but also objectual knowledge that can be autonomously generated and does not necessarily misrepresent the city's identity. Instead, city tours have the potential to enhance a tourist's autonomy, and partiality of the knowledge is a result of the partial nature of objectual knowledge in general. Finally, as we claim that city tours can be transformative and challenge established official narratives. We claim that it can. Okay. As such, city tours are not epistemically flawed in the way Kukla suggests. Despite these conclusions, we do not argue that city tours are always valuable. Our assessment of the epistemic value of city tours reveals several epistemic and ethical considerations. We outlined 4 of these here in the hope that this will initiate further research into the conditions under which city tours are considered to be valuable. Yeah, you know, what's funny about this is, like, my cousin is, like I said, he runs an Airbnb. He's, like, this is, like, being in the tourist industry is, like, family business at this point. Like, my grandma was a tour guide. He runs an Airbnb. So, like, this is, like, could give me ideas about stuff. No, thank you, Esper. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so it's like, I'm thinking like, ooh, can I provide a better tour that would get more people to come to my cousin's place? But he's already booked solid. Yeah, he's a super host. Okay. First, our argument relies on an actively engaged tourist who listen, ask questions, and attempt to orient themselves in a place, and tour guides who do not limit themselves to reproducing a list of facts, but who encourage discussion and critical thinking. Not all tourists actively participate, and some types of tours are more likely to facilitate passivity. Just so you know, there's often Twitch lurking in chats if you're worried about safety, etc. Yeah, if they're here, I'd be surprised, but that's fair. I have like a old Minesweeper friend, and she was friends with somebody who worked for Twitch. So you'd be in like a not very busy stream, and Twitch chat would be there, like Twitch staff, like they are around. So it's like, even though there's no reason to think that they are here, like you know, sometimes someone knows someone, and then, you know, you do get regular Twitch staff around. But that wasn't TOS. That was just something Corwin might be worried about IRL. Yeah. Yeah, in Twitch chat, don't give a shit. Sometimes they say something. Yeah, you'll see a white wrench on a black background. That's Twitch staff. Adam says, yes, but if my goal is to form the best opinion to me, or even if I was an expert, there are some hidden areas which I wouldn't normally have access to, and so maybe having just more experience, like a hidden one, would change my opinion of the city. Well, how interesting would that one spot have to be for that one hidden thing to change your opinion of the city? Like, how bad? I mean, because there's always going to be a bunch of hidden stuff, and like, if you're saying this one thing is going to change your opinion, that has to be massive. Okay. So the question then is what kinds of experiences are restricted or not, and how many experiences are adequate enough to form an opinion. Yes, the city is like this or like that. Is it always indeterminate based on selected experience? It's always going to be indeterminate, because guess what happens? The city's changing day to day. People die. People are born. People are moving in. People are moving out. It's not going to be the same city like immediately. It's the old, you can't step into the same river twice. The city is going to be different. It is. Yeah, well, some types of tours are more likely to facilitate passivity. Yeah, well, you can be lectured too. I mean, that's the case. I took a tour where there were no photographs and there were like questions were limited at the end. And so it's like you sit there and you hear a lecture, you walk into a place and it was like very old. They didn't want you to touch anything, and then you walk out. Now, they did some things where you got to ask questions, but like it was much more rigid. It wasn't like you were going everywhere. So yeah, back to Adam though. It's like everything, no matter what experience you have, your entire life is like this. Your entire life is one perspective. You're going to have certain experiences, and they're not going to be like, I mean, they're all going to be your experiences, of course, but like other people could have similar experiences, and that's going to give you one slice of humanity. Now, could you have like certain experiences that completely reshape your view of the world? Yes, that could happen, but like that's not unusual. That is how life is. So the Vienna you visited, that's in, Ivan is now visiting. Yeah, I mean it's the same name, but it's not going to be the exact same city. I mean, yeah, exactly, Corwin. Like a school trip. That's more like passive. I mean, this is the good kind of thing here is like they're talking about adults. Yeah. Okay, not all tourists actively participate. Some types of tours are more likely to facilitate passivity. Yeah, so if you're like a school trip sort of thing, like you get lectured at. For example, bus tours are designed so that tourists can passively look out their designated window and listen to a read script through headphones. Yeah, so like that is more passive, but you're still getting to feel the city through that bus. In these tours, tourists do not actively engage in the generation of their knowledge and are thought to commodify the city that they're visiting, and so fail to accurately represent the identity and dynamism of the city. Yeah, it's more restricted than a walking tour. So it's like, yes, you're still visiting the place. You get to experience New York City traffic if you are in a bus. So you are still experiencing some part of being embodied. You get New York City traffic if you take a bus tour, but you're not getting like, the same noises and smells that you would be if you were on the street. Really? More fucking bots? 2 in a fucking day? I haven't got that in a while. Bots have been bad. I mean, I've bot followers blocked, so maybe they're trying to get me some other way. About a massive prevalent experience, how about monuments 9/11? Say that was a massive event and colors your opinion of New York, even if I haven't been there after the event. No? Sure, but like you don't have to visit the 9/11 memorial. Like, you don't have to go anywhere near it. Like, yeah, props been getting heaps. Yeah, it's been like I've seen multiple streamers I follow get bot followed, which is really annoying because it screws up your chat and your bot running things. And I've been trying to get them on a service that blocks it, which I use. So yeah. DeCarlism, I was on a city tour as 15-year-old in Latvia and had a guy try to bump cigs off you and your buddy. I consider authentic. There you go. Yeah, I was on a school trip and someone tried to pickpocket me when I was like a high schooler. I had my wallet out to pay for something and they reached into my wallet and they grabbed my money and I held it tight and they couldn't and I was like, let go, and they wouldn't let go. So I had to push someone tried to rob me. It was like a kid though. I didn't want to hurt them. And eventually my friend, they tell it, like I pushed the kid away. From what my friend told me, like I pushed the kid and he flew across the room and fell into a heap on the other side of the room. I was like, and like he fell down some stairs. I was like, it's not what happened. But like I was like, yeah, I got like an authentic robbery experience when I was on a school trip with somebody. That was a school trip. Yeah. I mean, you could come through New York, Adam, and not experience anything to do with 9/11 easily. You don't even have to know about it. You don't have to think about it. It's a big city. I have superpowers. Yeah, no. Like I was like, let go. Didn't let go, and I just like pushed him away. Yeah, I have super pushing powers. I pushed. Okay. So, although we have focused on guided walking tours, further research is needed into the extent to which certain types of city tours facilitate passivity and non-autonomy in the tourist. Like I just said, if you are taking a bus tour, you are going to experience New York City traffic differently than on a walking tour. So that is part of the embodied life in being in New York, to experience New York City car traffic. Second, in section 2, we explained that the tourists are active epistemic agents insofar as they assess the credibility of a tour guide's testimony. However, there will be tourists who are epistemically unreasonable, who either believe the testimony of an unreliable source or who do not care about the reliability of the source. Similarly, tour guides also have the potential to be epistemically unreasonable, transmitting false propositional content or offering partial interpretations that obscure a significant part of the city's history and identity. Yeah, like when I was in New Orleans and the tour guide was like, yeah, it wasn't so bad to be a slave. Because apparently New Orleans had more lenient laws, slavery laws. Like it was not as bad to be a slave in New Orleans, or so they claimed. But like they were like, yeah, it wasn't so bad to be a slave. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it is. Yeah. That was a walking tour I was on. How do you know as a tourist, though, if your guy's a reliable source or not? Well, you have to judge them as a person, of course. Like, that tour guide didn't seem to know as much as they should have. And they seemed to be a little shaky on stuff, too. Rolling out the epistemology card on this one. Slavery apologist. Yeah, so, that's you know, maybe that person is not the person you want to be representing your city. Like, it's just like, maybe? I don't know. So, yeah. I mean, you can assess how intelligent people seem. Of course, there's going to be people who are really good at faking stuff, but, assume that's not the case. Yeah, and are you, that word means the difference between knowledge and truth, right? What? Which word? Epistemology. No, epistemology just means the study of knowledge. It does not mean the difference of knowledge and truth. Epistemology is just what counts as knowledge. I mean, that's the study of epistemology. What is truth? Truth is the way the world is. Epistemology is like how we know stuff. Now, we might know the truth, but we might also know things like probabilistic truths and all sorts of other stuff. Like, how do we learn truth? That's a different question. Truth is metaphysical. That's the way the world exists. Knowledge, on the other hand, is what we learn about it. Nihilism is also, I do need to care. Can a tour not just be an excuse to look at pretty things? What's authenticity anyway? What's the real experience of the city? But do you need to care? No. But this is part of the point I've been making, and also part of what they said. No matter where you are, you're only getting a slice of the city, and that's how our experience is. You can live there and you still get a slice of a city. It's a much bigger slice, but you're still getting a slice of the city. So it doesn't matter what you get. This is what my grandma would always tell people, because they'd always be like, well, I miss so much in New York. I was like, no shit. There's always more. And so you can sometimes come just to look at the pretty stuff. Sometimes you can come to see the wildlife. Multiple people have said this to me, and this shocked me when I heard. They wanted to see a New York City rat. And I was like, why would you want to see it? They were like, that's the local wildlife. And so my aunt came in, and she was like, there was a New York City. I was like, oh, rats over there. And she was like, oh, where? I was like, oh, you want to see them? And then, because there were a lot of times on the subway tracks. And so she was like, looking at the subway tracks, looking for the rats. And then I heard that from a streamer. They were visiting New York, and they were like, where's the rats? I want to see the rats. I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is a thing? New York City rats are a tourist draw? Yes, it is. So it's like, does that matter? Do you want to see the pretty paintings? Maybe. Do you want to see pretty things? Maybe. Do you want to see the New York City rats? Yeah, people do. Yeah, like a resident, you don't get to feel like a tourist either. Yeah, so it's different. Yeah. Dame says, if you're visiting, you never get an authentic experience. By authentic, you mean when someone lives there. Yeah, it's almost by definition, Dame. You're exactly right. There's rats in the subway. Yeah, that's where they live. A lot. They live underground. They're rats. I mean, where else do the rats live? That's where New York City rats live. They live underground. A lot of them are in the subways. Yep. It's like, yes. Okay, similarly, tour guides also have the potential to be epistemic. Yeah, everyone's unreasonable. They can just get things wrong. In this case, it could be argued that the tour guide not only violates the epistemological norms, but also the ethical norms and obligations. Yeah, like my tour guide in New Orleans was a shitty person and should not be a tour guide. Her mom was a tour guide and got her into the business. We were like, maybe we should have got the mom to give the tour, but then we were like, well, if the daughter's racist, maybe the mom is too. So they don't get run over. No, they're the subway tracks are about this high. The wheels are that high off the ground. So the rats are lower than they don't as long as they're not on the rail when the subway runs over, they're not going to get hit. In pizza shops, well, no, you generally don't want to have rats in restaurants. I mean, of course they get around, but like they're more likely in the trash bins outside, like in the dumpster in the trash bin. So they're not like in the restaurants. That's like a health violation. The apples don't roll fall from the trees. Yeah, that's fair. There's space for rat habitation under the rails. Yeah. So I don't know if you like train tracks have like these like beams, and then the rails go across the beams. So like there's like space around the stuff, and so it's like the rats are not like going over the rails all the time. Sometimes they can go under. Like the rails are on top of like these horizontal beams. Like the I forget what the word is, but like that's how they the crossing whatever. The rails are on top of the wood rat things. It's like think about like then the rat could get underneath the rail in between the wood planks that the rails stay on. DeCarlin says, as a food service worker, they don't trip if you eat out anywhere. There'll be a pest problem. It's a matter of how well it's managed. Yes, if you're in New York, there's going to be rats and there's going to be cockroaches. And it's always a battle because these are highly evolved organisms that are rather intelligent, actually. Rats are smart things, and the cockroaches are not as stupid as you'd hope they would be, and they don't die as fast. And so, yes, it is a constant battle. Yeah. But I mean, in New York City, just so you know, they implemented a rating system. So it's like A through D, and then if you fail, then like an F. So like an A through C or D. And you can actually look up every restaurant in the city and see their health violations and what they got. And like, so in A, you have to be pretty clean. And B, it actually is, you're kind of getting kind of dirty. Like an A is reasonably clean, but B and C, like it's getting dirty. So yeah. Cockroaches are survivors, intelligent or not, yeah. The pest guy for your place tells me Subway as a sandwich chain are notorious for pest control. Not surprised. I mean, those are franchises, so it's not like corporate controlled. I mean, I don't want like corporate Subway come after me. It's like the individual ones. I'm sure it's not like just somebody who's just bought a place doesn't always run it well. But I don't want to make any big claim. Stuff like lice making the Black Plague make me take pause. No. What it turns out, because I'm from New York and I heard a talk on this once, rats are territorial. If you actually do not kill the rats where you live, they will keep other rats out. So if you have rats, the best thing to do is actually just not kill them, but keep them from like spreading. And that will actually prevent any new rats from coming in and bringing any new diseases in. They will kill off the disease-bringing rats because they will protect their territory. So actually, the thing to do, which would be best, but it won't work because no one will accept it, is to keep the rat population you have. So, yeah. Yeah, it's all hearsay, but yeah. Adam says, right, personally, I don't need to go to that particular monument, but even if I hadn't, nonetheless, it's still a massive prevalent experience which persists, for a longer duration of time, and it colors the opinion for longer periods of time. Maybe for such massive markers and trains into, it's just what makes the city the city. I want to go to Greece because of the Parthenon. I want to go to Paris because of the Eiffel Tower. Exactly. But you don't have to. And if you want a more general view of like New York City, then you will have to engage with 9/11 and things like that, and Giuliani and the history and things that happen. But again, that doesn't have to be your experience. And will you have to say, oh, you missed out on stuff? Again, there is so much in New York. Like you could go to all the museums and not do anything else and just see like art. Like, okay, you could do that. And yeah, you could say, oh, I missed out on other stuff, but you saw all the art. Like you could go back and see all the art. It doesn't like if you think there's like ontologically just one thing that you have to see, this isn't Stonehenge. Like if you go to Stonehenge and you don't see the rocks, you fucked up. But like a city is different than that. Yeah, see, Corwin, that's the problem. Everyone is like, no, we don't want rats, but it actually doesn't work because we've never gotten rid of rats in our history of humankind. So it's like, yeah, rat-tat-too. God fucking damn it, people. Okay, let's get done with this paper. Okay. Third, even when both tourist and tour guide are considered epistemically reasonable, it could be that some city tours are morally objectionable. This worry is partially salient in the case of slum tourism, which has been claimed to promote exploitation even when tours are conducted with the permission from the inhabitants of economically deprived urban areas. In cases like these, the broader context in which the tour is conducted might place further conditions on the way in which testimonial and objectionable knowledge is shared and experienced. Yeah, so if you're just exploiting poor people for your own entertainment, that's generally bad, but that is not like inherently what a walking tour is. Okay, finally, our analysis highlights the prevalence of asymmetrical power relations between tourist and tour guide. Tour guides hold epistemic power over the tourist, which goes beyond mere selection and interpretation of facts. This selection is often shaped by a tour guide's own biases and prejudices, which have the potential to influence a tourist's understanding of the city. However, tourists also have the power over the tour guide. Larson and Megan suggest because tourists are paying clients who dictate demand for certain tours, they will often have the upper hand over the tour guide and can influence the way in which the tour is conducted. Further research would highlight nuances of these epistemic power relations. Yeah, you're providing a service. If no one likes your tour, then no one's going to go. And if you're a fraud, you will eventually be exposed because you're going to have someone on the tour that is just tagging along with their tourist friends and call you out on it. You're still rattled from the Giuliani Borat scene. Giuliani was always a scumbag. No one liked him here in New York. He just had some really good press after 9/11, and that's the only reason that he was like well liked in the country. He was hated here in New York. No one liked him. My assumption of a city tour is to specifically avoid poor neighborhoods and to show you the pretty shiny things. Yeah, but that's not always the case. There are slum tours. So yeah. But the fact that these things exist, that's why they're mentioning it. It's like that could be seen, even if the people are happy, like, oh yeah, come by, like whatever, we're cool. Like that could also be seen as exploitative. So, like again, say they're getting paid out of it. It's like, well, they're getting paid, you're getting a tour, everyone's happy with that, like sort of exchange. Now it's like, well, the people who are like holding their nose, like, oh, you can't go do that, exploiting them. You're like, fuck you, I'm paying them. It's like, I don't know. Then it's not so bad. All right, these epistemic and ethical considerations reveal that the value of city tours and city tourism more generally depends on those practices meeting certain conditions. These conditions need to account for the existing worry that they might misrepresent the city and render tourists as passive and lacking autonomy, but also the worries that we have mentioned here: epistemic reasonableness, epistemic power relations, and ethical considerations regarding the nature of the tour. In order to plausibly analyze the power dynamics and responsibilities of the tourist and tour guide and how this impacts the city's identity, it is not productive to claim that all city tours are, by nature, epistemically disvaluable. Instead, in this paper, we have shown this not to be the case, bringing to light the conditions under which city tours are epistemically valuable for both the tourist and the city. Yay, all done. Okay. Alrighty. I like this paper. Granted, I was highly biased in its favor. I agreed with what it said. I agreed with their analysis of the criticisms. So all of them. You almost died on my New York tour, and this is all. Then you only got this shirt. Yeah, exactly. So this is what we do here. If you're in chat now, you are free to rate. If you thought it was fun and you give it a brain, like fun ideas make the brain dance, you give it brain dance. Yes, you have to use proper spelling and capitalization. These are better TTEV emotes, so everyone, it's available to everyone. You don't have to be subscribed. If you thought existential or artistic drama, Nog Scream, deep ancient ideas, Ouroboros, Nog Oro, slicing and dicing arguments, Nog Knife, Nog Navel, for navel gazing arguments only for academic, Nog Turd, all style no substance, still poop underneath, and Nog Grapes for big claims that shriveled up. Now, just so you know, anything in the green will, like, I give an overall rating. That will boost the score. Everything in the red will decrease the score, as will the vote nay. That will give it a thumbs down. Vote yay is thumbs up. And vote meh will pull everything towards the middle. Thank you for rating Decarlism and Chocolate Mint. Yeah. So basically, yeah, what do I think? I mean, I thought this was fun. I mean, granted, this is unfortunately, like I was saying, I'm highly biased towards this sort of stuff. So I'm going to give it a brain dance too. I'm with you guys. What else? I mean, this touched on, like, like the aesthetic appreciation of a city. So I'm actually thinking this is along the lines of a like an Nog Scream here. I'm gonna give it a Nog Scream. These reviewers are smarter than you. You are free to do it anyway, Corwin. I am not you. If you are in chat now, you are welcome to it. Thank you, Dame Karen. Like you can just use the global vote yay, vote nay, vote meh. If you thought it was good, vote yay. If you thought it was bad, vote nay. And if you thought it was meh, vote meh. So like it's not that bad. You're a habit of arriving late, but this gave good vibes. Yeah, that's fine. You can vote on your vibes too. And I combine all the different emotes in a rating. So if you have a vote nay but like brain dance, you thought it was a shitty paper but had a few fun ideas, I averaged those two out. So it's like there you go. Hey, I'm happy you're here. You can arrive late if you want. Rare Quill lost. Yeah, Valpo. I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with Quill? Like, normally not wrong. Usually agree with Kukla. Yeah, thank you for the stream. Love this shit. Yeah, this was a fun one. Like, fun paper. Yeah, so weird to see Quill. Thanks, Vipers, for the rating. Yeah. This is generally, yeah, I'll give it a vote yay. This is like going to be a well-rated paper because, not only was it like they did it in a very clear way, there was no like real fancy stuff. Yes, you need to know some of the philosophy terms here, like the objectual, how they defined it. But like it wasn't like outside of that stuff, the general language was all right. They made a few claims that were, interesting, yeah. Yay for my take, I give the paper a meh. Well, then write vote meh. Well, thank you for the yay for the take, but then you just write the vote meh as it's spelled over there, that way. Cool. And if you want me to do it for you, I will. But if you can't type it out, just let me know. More work from me then. Anything else to say about this? Yeah, like I said, I've thought about tour guides before. My grandma was one. I considered it when I needed a job. Would that like actually I can talk. I know about New York. I could go tour guide. Yeah. So it's like vote meh. Yeah, see, unfortunately capitalization matters. I'll fix it if you don't. Was there anything I disagreed with here? The funny part is it's like, they even almost deserve a knife. Like I'm with Vipers on this. Like they were thank you, Corwin. Nog knife. It was actually, and they got the technical ones. You feel fucking old till I get this? Let me tell you something. Getting, like, the whole concept of getting chat to use emotes has been, like, in discussion because I've been setting up a website to, like, display the reviews. But, like, the idea that I can get chat to vote in, like, this sort of, like, emote rubric is a little of a crazy, like, ask from me. It's not easy.